Витаю! Здравствуйте, люди! Меня зовут Cossack Hetman. Сегодня поговорим об Code Kozak. И что это? Hello everyone, my name is Cossack Hetman. Today we'll be talking about Code Kozak, or the Cossack Code of Honor. And what exactly is that? So, Code Kozak, as I mentioned, is the Cossack Code of Honor and Conduct. Its origins can be traced back to the late 1500s to mid-1600s. There's discrepancy on the date because we don't know exactly when it was developed because it wasn't written down. Or if it was, we have no surviving documentations of its initial inception with its core principles and tenets. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. Code Kozak was developed in part as a response to the issues being caused by bandits and mercenary groups committing atrocities, posing as Cossacks, as well as solving the issue of having unregistered Cossack units, true Cossacks, who are trying to do the right thing and live their everyday life and existence. Thus, the Cossacks, along with the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, created registered Cossack units. This was because during this time period, the late 1500s to mid-1600s, Cossacks were living predominantly in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth lands that were recently conquered or claimed in areas that are now currently southwestern and central Ukraine. These registered Cossack units were state-registered Cossacks in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. But they needed to develop something further that would identify themselves and make them stand out as true Cossacks, something that could be a true check and balance that the government could use to test somebody who was found committing atrocities and claimed to be a Cossack. So this is where Code Kozak gets developed and where it comes from, as a way to solve this issue and a way to decipher a true Cossack from a false one. And, as I said, it was a way to legitimize and add checks and balances to the Cossack way of life and developing and fleshing out what the Cossack lifestyle would be or should be, and then this translates later into Cossack statehood and the ideal of what the Cossack state would be vis-a-vis the Cossack hetmanate and then later Cossackdom as a whole. This is the time period and the circumstances where Code Kozak arises and comes out of. And it's important to note that Code Kozak was mainly an oral tradition passed down from father to son or grandfather to grandson, or from the community elders to the new applicants or aspiring Cossacks in a community. If these codes were ever written down in the initial inception, there currently are no surviving documentations of them. The documents that we do have that describe this initial Code Kozak comes from external sources, so outsiders looking into Cossack society, mainly Polish scholars and historians, Russian scholars and historians, and as well as many other Western nations that were in the region at the time, Venetian envoys, Swedes, Germans. And these scholars and observers mention in their articles or in their writings that the Cossacks had a very strong ideal, which is known as Kazachestva. It is the most translatable or relatable ideal it can be compared to, for ease, is the Greek and Spartan ideal of thumos, what the Greeks called thumos, or spiritedness. It's that extra drive, it's that X factor to be the very best you can be and continually surpassing that and just having a very strong drive for life, both in everyday life as well as in battle, and conducting yourself with the utmost amount of honor, respect, and spirit that you can muster. As the Cossacks start spreading out and creating more hosts and then later get enveloped into the Russian Empire, they start creating and developing their own unique Code Kozaks for each host. And that develops out of the simple fact that as they start expanding and going into new geographical regions, their lifestyles, their cultures, and their traditions start changing slightly from one another. And that's based off of the people who comprise each of the hosts, the people who are in their newly conquered or developed regions and territories, their new lands. They intermingle with the cultures that are present in that region. And the geography does change and have different demands on you as a person. And thus, the things that are important to you or the best way of living changes depending on where you're at. Cossacks of the Danube Sich near the Black Sea in modern-day Romania have a very different Code Kozak, code of honor, code of conduct, culture and traditions than Ural Cossacks in the Ural Mountains, as well as Cossacks in Siberia. They all have different cultures and traditions based off of where they are, what they're experiencing, what they need to elevate themselves to be, and what is important and strategic for them at the time. So we do know that this progression throughout time eventually leads to the development of unique and different and tailored Code Kozaks between all the Cossack hosts. However, there is a valid counter-argument to this. There's an exception, it's well-grounded, that there was some Cossack hosts, or a Cossack host in this case, that did not follow a prescribed Code Kozak. So as I said, the exceptions to this rule are the Don Cossacks. During the 1600s to 1700s, the Don Cossacks were known for attacking anyone and everyone within their territory or the surrounding area, even their own brothers and other Cossacks. This is during a time period of chaos, where Cossacks were fighting for the Principality of Muscovy, for the Swedes, for the Poles, and then there's Cossacks who are just taking advantage of the chaos and looting and raiding the countrysides and villages and territories. So, and this was one of the core tenets that was shared in the original Code Kozak, was that you always had to be there for your brothers, and brotherhood was a very stressed thing. Loyalty and honor were extremely stressed in the original Code Kozak and that ideal of Kazachestva. But the Don went strictly against this by engaging in combat with their brothers when they would when they were on opposing factions. Typically, other Cossack hosts, if this occurred, they would typically have to withdraw themselves from the battle, or they would switch sides in the middle of the battle, which led to, of course, naturally, very angry and bad views of the Cossacks, depending on who got screwed over. But nonetheless, this was one of the major exceptions throughout time where Cossacks did not adhere to what is typically ascribed as Code Kozak or Kazachestva.